Hoops Hype has done a number of rankings when it comes to players in their position, and now they have Nikola Vucevic ranked in the top 15 of centers around the NBA. Y'all know we're going to talk about that, talk about Nikola Vucevic impact this upcoming season, and try to figure out how long we will see Nikola Vucevic in a Bulls uniform. Y'all know we're going to talk about it, break it all down, but you got to hear the music first.
Cognac, gang.
Shy Bulls podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down on another daily episode. So if you're tuned in with me, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now we've seen a couple of these rankings that came about from Hoops Hypes, to where we seen players like Josh Giddey end up on the point guard list, Coby White end up on the shooting guard list, and not much after that. But we land on centers for the Chicago Bulls, well, around the NBA, and Nikola Vucevic, I was looking for him, and Hoops Hype has him listed as 13. This is ahead of centers like Kristaps Porzingis, Naz Reid, and Isaiah Hartenstein, just to throw a couple names out there on who Nikola Vucevic has been placed in front of. But Nikola Vucevic sits behind centers like Chet Holmgren, Rudy Gobert, and Jared Allen when it comes down to where he really is. Now, Nikola Vucevic this past season, look, it seemed like he checked out on me. I ain't even going to hold you. But if we're looking at the numbers and the numbers only, Nikola Vucevic last season, 18 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 53% from the field, and 40% from the three-point line, which is not bad numbers. And again, it's never been about saying that Nikola Vucevic is a bad player when it comes to my pettiness on the roster for the Chicago Bulls. It's always been about, can we get a defensive big in here that is also a lob threat to help out our point guard of the future in Josh Giddey? Now, but for the moment, and what it really came down to, and the pettiness had to slow down and we had to actually talk about basketball, is that Nikola Vucevic ain't going nowhere right now. So it had to come down to, hey, he's still a good player. The Chicago Bulls felt like there was no deal out there to get him out the way per se. And this is who we got to roll with. He's always been a solid player. You can always count on Nikola Vucevic to give you that 18 and 10. Again, the problem was always on the defensive side, to where me and my co-host C-Dub always felt like there should have been a difference at the position for the Chicago Bulls as we move into a new iteration of the Chicago Bulls. Now, we sticking with him. We going to rock with him, and we going to see what he's going to be able to bring to the table. Now, I'm not mad at the Hoops Hype ranking at all. Not even gonna hold you. I do believe he's better than Kristaps Porzingis. I do believe he's better than Isaiah Hartenstein as a complete basketball player and a individual. And I'm not mad at the players that was placed in front of him, like a Miles Turner, like Rudy Gobert and Chet Holmgren. I have no pushback on that. So I think that Hoops Hype actually got the rankings right. Now, when we switch over to how can he impact the Chicago Bulls this upcoming season, that's a different conversation. My expectations for the Chicago Bulls this upcoming season is to allow what I believe can be a young core that can start to develop out of this season if the Chicago Bulls elect to move in that direction. That core, or that young core, it's going to also include other players, but I think that the main focus will be Josh Giddey, Coby White, and Matas Buzelis. And like many of people out there, the expectation for Matas Buzelis is to thrive, is to take a step forward. But we do know, and we've been watching basketball for quite some time, and definitely been watching the Chicago Bulls team for a while, it's not always guaranteed that a young player is going to take a step forward. But what separates Matas Buzelis from guys of the past, like a Dalen Terry, like a Patrick Williams, or Julian Phillips, or some of the young players on the team, what sets him apart is the mentality, the way that he talks, the athleticism that he has, the improvement that we've seen across an entire season after not starting that meant or starting off with a lot of playing time in the NBA. But as the season went on, Matas Buzelis got better. And the same thing is what we are expecting from Matas this upcoming season. But when it comes to the impact that Nikola Vucevic can have, I think that the point totals will still be there. The rebounding will still be there. So I think that in many ways that could be some type of impact on the basketball court when we talking about basketball conversations. I think that if Nikola Vucevic can still continue to be a really good three-point shooter from the three, that helps the Chicago Bulls. That helps unclog the paint for driving lanes for a Matas, for a Josh Giddey, for a Coby White, and so on and so forth. Now, if he's able to go out there and rebound and buy us some extra possession, that helps as well. But my biggest question is, how competent will Nikola Vucevic be on a defensive end? That has always been the question when it comes to Nikola Vucevic. We know you are a double-double machine. We know that. The problem is with so many questions around the starting lineup when it comes to defense, and guys like Josh Giddey and guys like Coby White and you yourself, Nikola Vucevic, how does it all mesh well to where the Chicago Bulls can at least be respectable as a defensive team? That's always been the question. But I think that Nikola Vucevic will be able to provide some type of impact for this team for the time being, for however long that he's going to be here. I'm not counting out the entire season, but my expectations is to have Nikola Vucevic build some of that trade value and be gone before the deadline. Now, things can change, but for the meantime, in between time, if we ever see that scenario come and it has to play out by the trade deadline, the impact needs to be felt at the start of the season. The Chicago Bulls don't have an opportunity to play with their food when the season starts. You have matchups versus the Cavs. You have matchups versus the Knicks and other teams that are going to in the Eastern Conference fighting for positioning. And a lot of teams have gotten better, and there are some teams that want to absolutely put it on wax to show us what they're made of. So it's all going to come down to the other young players, but Nikola Vucevic as the lead dog per se, at least as the elder, I think is a better way to put it. Lead by example. Hold guys accountable, but also hold yourself accountable. Because when we talk about accountability, it seemed a little lackluster when it came to accountability for Nikola Vucevic at the start of last season. And Nikola Vucevic has been playing, Eurobasket this offseason, working on his game, still really, really productive in some games overseas. So you like to see that stuff. But now let's help these young guys continue to push this thing forward. And if you want to go, you help yourself as well. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. You figure out how to help the young guys build up some trade value, and then you possibly get your wish and go on to playing for a contender. But I think it has to start at the beginning of the season for Nikola Vucevic. Now, the biggest question is, after we talk about impact to help the Chicago Bulls, how long do we see Nikola Vucevic being in a Bulls uniform? I think it's a fair question. I believe many of you also believe that it's a fair question in saying, hey, is there a world where we see Nikola Vucevic in a Bulls uniform for the entire season? I think there's a possibility. Is that something that I'm wishing for or hoping for? Absolutely not. But it's definitely one of those things that can come into play when you talk about what the Chicago Bulls have done in the past. New season, but potentially still some of the same stuff. Excuse me. And just to continue the thought, I think that the Chicago Bulls, if they are willing to see what transpires with this team, I think you're going to have a large enough sample size until the trade deadline to determine if you are going to be good with moving off of players with expiring contracts, not just Nikola Vucevic. I think it'll be a great sample size to say, all right, cool, we've seen enough. We've seen enough of Jalen Smith at the big spot, seen enough from Zach Collins at the big spot, and you know what I'm saying, or Nikola Vucevic, or simply this season is pretty much not heading in the right direction for you to move. The Chicago Bulls, they got a lot of tough decisions to make, and they are going to have to be ahead of some of those decisions that they want to make. I understand that we came into this offseason and said we have a plan. We're not going to skip any steps. We're going to stick to this, and we're going to be planning for 2026. But how do you plan for 2026? In my mind, a smart way to do that is not only should you be anticipating a bunch of contracts or a bunch of money to come off the books to where you have now more availability to bring in a different type of players, but you should also be seeing how can you load up on draft capital. That should be another thing. Contracts for Javon Carter, contracts for Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, so on and so forth. With these decisions that you have to make, you gotta be out ahead of this. And like, if we keeping it a buck, I think Nikola Vucevic finishes out this season. That's just my belief. I hope I'm wrong, because I'd rather get something for Nikola Vucevic than to allow him to walk. But I know that from looking at the Chicago Bulls front office, they typically overvalue their players and refuse to move off said players when the time is right. And a player that was in this same situation a few seasons ago, I know we keep beating a dead horse. I know we keep talking about the same stuff, but you cannot ignore the fact that the Chicago Bulls had phone calls for Andre Drummond and said, nah, we believe he's worth more than 2 second-round picks, and let him go. So if somebody calls with the same offer, what is my expectation? It's to let Nikola Vucevic play and let him go. That's just how I'm looking at it. Now, I understand if we're saying that the Chicago Bulls, let's just say they got a chance to make the 6th seed or something like that, you might consider holding on to Nikola Vucevic. I'm not even going to hold you. If the Chicago Bulls are overachieving at that particular moment, and let's just say they at the 6th seed, because my expectation is having them in the play-in this upcoming season, but let's just say they have a decent lead at the 6th seed by the time the trade deadline gets here. I understand the want to hold on to a said player. I don't necessarily think it's the best idea. I will still move Nikola Vucevic and say, hey, young fellas, go shine, go thrive, go do something. But hey, you never know with this front office. So we just have to chalk it up to the game and leave it right there with it. But hey, that is it for me today, talking about Nikola Vucevic and the Chicago Bulls. But hey, before I get up out of here, I want to appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of Shy Bulls Podcast. Make sure you go ahead and leave your feedback, comments, thoughts down in the comment box. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We are not too far away from the NBA season, and this should be a fun one. I don't know how successful it will be, but I believe we're going to see a lot of fun things happening this upcoming season. But in the meantime, I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all always see red, and y'all already know I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure. Peace out, y'all.
Cognac. Gang.